It's been three of some of the most wonderful years of my life building this thing with a really good way to call a true friend and someone who I really respect in the business.
Hello and welcome to Beauty and the Biz, where we talk about the business and marketing side of plastic surgery. I'm your host, Maley, author of Your Aesthetic Practice, What Your Patients Are Saying, as well as consultant to plastic surgeons to get them more patients and more profits. Now, today's guest is Dr. Dominick Gadaleta. He's a board-certified facial plastic and reconstructive surgeon and founder of OG Aesthetics. It's a private practice in the Bay Area, specifically in Menlo Park, California, and he's been there the past 3 years. Now, he trained at Boston University, then spent 5 years focusing on face and neck surgery at Thomas Jefferson University, and then completed a fellowship in facial plastic and reconstructive surgery at New York University. Now, Dr. Gadaleta is an active member of AAF-PRS and AAO Head and Neck Surgery. He's also an avid researcher and has presented his findings at national medical conferences. Dr. G, welcome to Beauty and the Biz.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm honored to be here. I really value your podcast. There needs to be more voices in this space talking about business and how to do it and kind of sharing thoughts and ideas. So I'm really looking forward to it.
Oh, fantastic. And we need to hear your thoughts and your pearls. So why facial plastic surgery and why not some other specialty?
That's a good question. I think a lot of us are drawn to this specialty for different reasons. Mine was a pretty unique story, just like everyone else's. I was actually younger, 14. And at that time, my dad's a doctor. He owns a private practice in Long Island, New York, where I'm from. So I kind of had an introduction to the side of medicine and patient care, which he kind of brought home with him stories about, the value that he took from these patient experiences on a day-to-day basis. And then this tragic thing happened. I was a pyromaniac, risk taker, which I think also lends itself to becoming a surgeon a little bit. And I was playing with fire in the summertime with friends, and a cologne bottle ended up exploding in my face. So I ended up with 7 hours in the emergency room. They called in a plastic surgeon, and he was there to meticulously put me back together again. I had a broken nose that he had to reduce in the OR. Half my eyelid was chopped off essentially and had to be reconstructed. And I remember going into that experience, even at 14, and kind of appreciating the fact that this was going to be likely a life-changing event, and that, moving forward, every room that I would walk into, there would have to be a follow-up explanation of why I looked the way I looked, or there was going to be some kind of undertone talk about it. And as I recovered from that event, and the work that he did was just really amazing, and most people are like, there's no way I'd be able to tell that you had anything like that happen to you. That was like a very powerful moment to see that someone could do that with their hands. I always liked building things. I liked drawing. I loved art. And to combine that with what I saw my dad getting so much out of with his patients was just like a marriage that really kind of continued to develop as I got older and more into facial plastic, specifically kind of finding out the route of going through otolaryngology specifically to get to facial plastics. I found out there was just more and more to love about the field in general. So being a detail-oriented person, I just found the facial anatomy was something that really intrigued me.
I had no idea I heard there was a traumatic event. That's all I knew. You don't have any scars at all.
Yeah, I mean, he correctly pointed out then at 14, your capacity to heal is just tremendous, and I think that was largely true. And luckily, most of the scars they run in my relaxed skin tension lines, which is a way we try to conceal scars on our everyday patients that we're doing reconstruction on. So it just happened to work out really well. He was an extremely talented surgeon. He's still in practice in New York, and saved me from something that I would have to explain to everyone. It's something that I think an experience that obviously gave me a lot of empathy for patients that are going through similar things.
For sure. My God. How much of your practice now is recon versus cosmetic?
So, originally coming out into, you go into academics, and especially with a story like mine, which a lot of people have, your goal is to be coming out. I knew I wanted to go into private practice, but I wanted to be kind of as much 50-50 reconstructive and cosmetics as I could be. And then you come out and you realize it's actually a very hard configuration to set up. We are at this point probably about 20% reconstruction and about 80% cosmetics. And I think that's partially, we can kind of get into how the business of medicine is created to kind of make it a little bit more challenging to offer through private practice, high insurance. cases, but we make it work. We try to augment our cosmetic cases with the reconstruction. We both, me and my partner, who I set up OG Aesthetics with, Dr. Timothy Orlip, really love the reconstructive side of things. I think being a good reconstructive surgeon really helps and lends itself to becoming a better cosmetic surgeon, because those cases that you really get to explore the anatomy and you really got to just do what you have to do to reconstruct. So we still value reconstruction in our practice. We still do a lot of nasal and functional surgeries, and we do a lot of Mohs reconstruction. Is it as much as I hoped for or yearned for when I was younger and an aspiring surgeon? Not as much. But I also have found that the cosmetic and aesthetic side of things have a lot of unique facets to it that have been really fun to kind of get to know and explore as well.
It's just become very difficult to balance both.
Yeah,
Just that's the real world because once you leave academia, you've got to go out in the real world and compete against e- everyone else, and you have to find your place. And the financial parts of that are so challenging because it's not. It might be worthwhile ethically and morally, but practically, it's very difficult to do both.
yeah.
But you can, if you can, terrific. So here you are. You were at the University of New York. You did your fellowship with them, but are they teaching you the business and marketing side of surgery, or is that completely research based?
So that's a good question. I think when I went to residency at Thomas Jefferson, that was a unique program, and that the volume there was exceptional in terms of the surgical volume, the surgical demand, and it was well known. Even my interviews with them, that was going to be a place where I was going to be really tested from a surgical volume standpoint. That's where I was going to get my footing in being a good surgeon and a technician, essentially. And so I came out of that experience and then went to NYU. NYU had a very unique setup and still does. It's We call it, white glove when you're essentially there observing someone. So in Manhattan, I was working with some of the top facial surgeons in the country there, and you're not going to, as a fellow, have a chance to really kind of do any major parts of those operations. So in that sense, it's white glove. You're not getting dirty. But we'd also have, 2 days of the week where we'd have our own clinic. We were doing only facial plastic surgery in that clinic, so injectables, non-surgical, rhinoplasties, and facelifts and aging face cases. And then we'd have our own OR day. So it was a really nice mix of going to see surgery performed at the top level, and then going and doing it yourself and learning from those experiences and going back and forth. The business side of thing, it was one of those things where there wasn't emphasis on it. Just like a lot of people will mention about the medical training, just doesn't have enough time, I don't think, to leverage itself to learning all the things you need to learn when you go out on your own. But you pick up a lot through osmosis, and a lot of, I think, um, the business side of things is really kind of modeling what you are looking for your business to look and feel like. And I think what NYU gave me, and working with some of those higher tiered clinics in New York City, was that this is the level where I want to be, and now I have to kind of reverse engineer it. So even outside of my fellowship, there's been a lot of mentorship calls and things like that on how can I recreate this environment. I know where the level needs to be set, and I want to get there, and so it's a matter of just putting the pieces together.
So how did you end up in private practice in California if you're from New York?
Yeah, good question. So, like a lot of people that transition, it's my wife was from this area.
Ah,
So, and I
life.
always, yeah, the wife dragged me out kicking and screaming, but I always knew that there was always something like calling about California. I had bounced around, like a lot of us do in academics, and was all mostly in the Northeast region. I probably lived for a time in almost every major market city there. I lived for a little while in Chicago too, spent about a year or two there. But there was something always kind of calling me out west. I just kind of knew there was some energy that was there that I was looking forward to experiencing. And so we came out here in 2020. It was, the middle of COVID. Um, there we were desperately just kind of looking for opportunities in this area, and I found a position where I could work with a surgeon who was established, and it was kind of like a hybrid rent share of overhead and a little bit of support from that practice. But it was basically just like a temporary situation to see if we like the fit of California, if we like this specific area, and ultimately, kind of what everyone said from the East Coast, you're never going to come back, kind of started to become more and more true. And then 2 years into it, and when we kind of made the family decision that no, this is probably where we want to, stay long term, that's kind of when I started talking and sharing ideas more about going to private practice with my good friend Timothy Ortlip, who I trained with and overlapped at Thomas Jefferson. So he was a fellow doing his fellowship there in facial plastics when I was in my fourth year of training. And so we spent, countless hours in the OR together. Just we had a lot of fun operating together. We learned a lot from each other, and we shared a lot of the same mentality about the practice we were looking to build. And it was kind of like this whole year long dating process where we kind of just we'd sit, we'd go out for drinks, and we'd talk about every kind of scenario that could be thrown at us from a business perspective. What happens if this happens? What happens if one person's busier or this happens? And just kind of tried to work through as many things as we could. And I think there was some point we said, okay, I think this could work, and we decided to go out and build OG Aesthetics. And it's been three of some of the most wonderful years of my life building this thing with a really good way to call a true friend, and someone who I really respect in the business, and um, a lot of learning on the fly. But I think we've done a pretty good job of kind of trying to achieve all our goals in this, realistic goals that we set for ourselves in these first 5 years.
And in case anyone missed it, OG is the last name of each of you, right?
Yes. Well, that was actually what sealed the deal, I think, because once we said Ortlip Gadaleta and we said Go Aesthetics, and that doesn't sound right, but we said OG Aesthetics, and we're like, okay, we're in California, OG, the proper way of doing things. There's this kind of like familiarity with that kind of brand. And there was a lot of fun potential that we could play with it. So we said, okay, we got to do this.
Well, it seems to me the biggest challenge was, in case others don't know this, Menlo Park is the home of Facebook, and they have taken over that whole arena, like Silicon Valley, and the real estate there is out of control. So, did you have any trouble finding a spot and somewhere to live?
It is. I mean, it's definitely out of control, but I would say like it is, we're in the heart of Silicon Valley. So I mean, 80-90% of our clients are, in the tech industry, I would say. Lots of engineer mindset. And we could talk more about the demographics there. But obviously from a cosmetic and cash-based standpoint, the perfect spot where you want to set up a location, two major markets, one north in San Francisco, one south in San Jose for us. And we're kind of dead set in the middle. And then you have the whole peninsula there, which is a really sought after, I would say, piece of real estate and land. And so we did searching for about 6 months, and we found a great location. It was just convenient, I think, to get to everywhere. What you find when you come to California, maybe it's just a Northern California thing, people don't want to drive more than 15 minutes. So
Mhm.
kind of finding the right spot where you're close to the highway. And we found this beautiful building that had a really nice, exterior, and just needed some kind of a little TLC on the inside. And we kind of did it in a budget conscious way. We said, this is going to be still a kind of like the early honeymoon phase for our business. We got to still see if this relationship works. Let's not go too crazy off the bat and make an investment that we're going to regret. And so we found this location. We kind of spruced it up. We didn't build out any OR. We didn't really pull any kind of permits or knock down any existing structures. Just made the current structure look the way we wanted it to. And it's been a great home base. Our lease is up in 2 years. So we had a short-term lease, and we're currently kind of working out if we want to stay in the building we're in now, or we're going to be probably moving somewhere in the same vicinity in the next 2 to 3 years with a full build out plan with our probably two accredited OR suites.
Yeah, you can't beat it. If we talk about that on the show a lot. Do you need your own OR? And it's just it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure when you have it. And frankly, you can justify it by just the time savings and the hassle factor, and
Yeah.
just the convenience of it all. It's
I think so too, especially with the model that we built. I mean, we have two of us, so and both of us are very interested in being high volume surgeons. So
Mm.
we kind of knew this was in the cards. We just wanted to take things one step at a time, and I'm happy we didn't go right off the bat and do this big build out. And the relationship is stronger than ever. But God forbid, things kind of fell apart, and we had all these huge loans that we took out and things like that. So what I tell young surgeons is, in the beginning, stay as flexible as possible. You're not going to have the volume or the demand to support that kind of a prop up, huge surgical center at that time. It's hard to find surgeons that you're going to be able to rent space to reliably, and that you make sure that they're good people and doing good work. And so it's just an extra burden and takes away from the focus of what you really need to be focusing on the first 5 years of practice, which is the core business and building your brand and your reputation in the area, which I feel like needs to be pretty much 100% of the focus. And just for in the beginning, managing a whole staff in the your standalone surgical center is just too big of a distraction, or at least I thought it was.
Yeah. I recommend, if you are a good networker and you're new at this, just use someone else's OR until you figure it
Right.
out. Like, forget the surgery,
100%.
forget the hospital, just use your friends, for a
Yeah.
couple days a week, and you almost have booked time there or block time, and that's your next best bet next to your own.
Yeah. That's what we did. We got privileges out of like five of the different surgical centers, basically all the ones on the peninsula that we were aware of. gave
Mhm.
us the most flexibility when it came to booking our patients. And then we slowly kind of narrowed it down to, two of our favorite essentially that gave us, block time that was very reliable and that we really liked the staff and felt comfortable with. So it was a great, like, kind of natural, organic way to kind of get to where we are now, which we have 2 days a week essentially guaranteed in the OR, and we do small cases 1 day of the week in the office.
The smartest practices know a big part of their practice growth comes from retention, referrals, and repeat treatments, not just from new internet stranger leads. That's why I created the KISS Loyalty Club, a done for you system that keeps your patients returning, referring, reviewing, sharing you on social media, and completing surgery. Discover how KISS can grow your own practice revenues by visiting kissloyalty.com today. Let's just talk about anesthesia for a second because that keeps coming up. General, IV sedation, or awake? Where are you at?
Yeah. um, I I had mentors that did both. So I had, Norman Pistoric, who's a famous
Of
rhinoplasty
course.
surgeon. He retired. He was doing awake rhinoplasties on every single person, which was a big no-no from where I trained at Jefferson. It was, too much of a risk for aspiration. But he had magic hands, and his patients had a drop of blood during the case. Not everyone's like that. A lot of the surgeons, the other surgeon that I really, my one of my biggest mentors is David Rosenberg, who I worked with, and he was a big proponent for everyone gets a tube because then I don't have to think about the airway. And I'm already thinking about a million things and I need to focus on what I need to focus on. And the airway is not something I want to be working with throughout the case. And so I've kind of taken more of that approach. I think in a lot of ways, modern anesthesia is so safe. I find a lot of patients, when you say the general anesthesia word, they get frozen. They've heard that it's dangerous or there's high risk involved. And I reassure them, that, where I was at Jefferson when we were taking care of these head and neck patients that are, smokers, drinkers, the unhealthiest of the diabetics, or when we're doing 18-hour, 19-hour free flap cases on them, and they do just fine after anesthesia. The people that we're generally bringing for the surgeries that we're doing are healthy, they're active, they're non-smokers. And so it's very safe. If we're doing things in the office and once we have our own facility, we'll probably do a little bit more IV sedation and get a little bit more nuance with that. But for right now, it's mostly general anesthesia for every facelift for the most part. Smaller things in the office, a little bit of oral sedation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the patients will demand it, and that will force you to take a look at it more because everyone's heard the horror stories about general, So as the consumers are more educated, I think they want the choice, just
hmm And it helps with post-op swelling and nausea. And if you have, a lot of patients suffer from post-anesthetic nausea and vomiting, which is a big thing you want to avoid, obviously, after you get a major facelift.
I for sure.
Yeah.
So what's your practice? So you've got the two revenue generators are the surgeons. Do you have anybody else in there revenue producing?
So we are probably going to be hiring someone this year, which I'm very excited about. Bringing in an injector, non-surgical provider, a mid-level. For right now, it's been me and my partner take on everything. Essentially, we're doing all the non-surgical and the surgical, and it's been a great way. In the beginning, in the first couple of years, you have the capacity to take that on. And throughout my career, I've leaned on the non-surgical as opposed to going. What a lot of people will do is some general ENT, some cosmetics, or
Mhm.
you kind of do some surgical aesthetics that props up your surgical business until that surgical business really kind of takes off. But I do find that there's a lot of value in the non-surgical because, you first of all, you become a better surgeon, understanding volumetric changes when you're doing filler, understanding kind of skin changes and those things. They make you a better surgeon, understand the whole kind of bigger picture. The other thing they do is they give you FaceTime in front of patients. You don't get to really talk to patients you're operating with on if they're asleep the whole time. So getting 30, 45 minutes in front of a patient, they get to really get to know you, they bond with you. That's when they start sending you friends and family. So it ends up being a gateway to the surgical route. And you kind of have more of opportunity to kind of express your brand. So I think it's been really great for me to take on that non-surgical in the beginning of my career. But now it's getting to the point where if you're not careful, and I'm in this very interesting position where because I really haven't put a limiter on it, now I'm starting to find the non-surgical in some ways is overwhelming my ability to see the surgical consults. So now I had to go back with my staff like 6 months ago and say, okay, now we have to start limiting my non-surgical to this amount of time to allot for patients to come and see me for surgical consultations because that part can just grow and grow and grow. And you have a lot of returning clients, so there's a certain amount of retention that you get, and it's very easy to kind of get overwhelmed with that.
It's such a great differentiator because I would love for the physician, the surgeon to do my Botox and filler, because you don't normally get that. You get a nurse,
Yeah.
which is fine. But for now, I say work it until you can't.
Yeah.
If it's
Right, exactly. I think there's like only good things that come out of that. Yeah, it's I think a lot of surgeons they just want to be operating, but I think there's a lot of value that comes to being in front of the patient and getting to know them a little bit better.
for sure.
Yeah.
What has been the biggest challenge of running your own solo practice?
I think the biggest challenge for us has been, and I've heard this expressed on your podcast before, so sorry if it sounds repetitive, but I think it is really kind of finding the right team, building the right team. And this is something me and my partner talk about all the time, and one of the things that I've kind of related it to is that, you evolve as a surgeon, the technique, we're obviously much better than we were when we were residents. And that was from, adding little nuances of experience and getting all these kind of different, techniques established. And it's going to be the same thing with building our team. I look at a lot of things like an organic process, and it's going to take a while before we, have this team in front of us that we feel is, our like true dream team. And I feel like we have a fantastic team right now that we've really taken 3 years to develop. But it's all those things about thinking about ahead. How do you get that culture to stay, and how do you make it where we're going to be busier and busier, and our actual footprint in the office is going to be smaller, and how do we transition who's overseeing it and making sure they're doing a good job. And so it's a lot of kind of thoughtful constructing of the business and building those foundations that set up for success in the workplace and keeping the culture strong.
Well, the surgeons quickly learn that they need to learn management and leadership and people skills. And what's it called? EQ or something? You have to
Yeah.
you have to fix your emotional quotients or whatever that's whatever that's all about.
Yeah.
But it's so true because you're the leader and you've
Right.
got to lead the team or you don't have a team, And if you want
Right.
a team, you've got to meet with them. They have to know your values. You have to keep telling them that. You have to listen to them. They have to be heard. Oh my God, it's a whole other thing. So if
Yeah, it's an active process. It's not like something that you can't just hire someone good and just expect them without any kind of repetitive check-ins and really kind of mentoring and things like that. That they're just going to be able to go out there and achieve whatever your vision is. You really have to spend the time to work with them together to kind of mold the team that you need them to be in the future. And so that's definitely something that we're still continuing to put a lot of focus on. And I think those will be some of the bigger challenges of the next 3 years as we continue to kind of grow our business and grow the amount of staff that we have.
Well, I know a lot of the surgeons say, I don't need to do all that. I'm just going to hire the office manager. She's going to figure all that out. But frankly, that's when you open the door to embezzlement and all sorts of drama in the office because anyway, that's a whole other story.
Yeah,
So I would
100%.
say, when you're younger, I would say it's not that hard. Just read some books, just read some
Yeah,
leadership books. It's not that difficult.
right,
Um,
right.
so tell me, give me one mistake you made that you learned a lot from that others could learn from and not make it themselves.
I would say, I think like going back again to like the hiring, I think we've done a better job in the last year or two. But I think very early on, not taking the interview processes seriously, really kind of making sure that you're standardized with the questions you're asking. I think a lot of times, well, in the beginning when we were hiring staff, it was a very casual interview process. It was like, oh, we're going to meet the doctor. We're going to sit. How was your day? Tell us a little about you. There was no really like getting to trying to be standard with these things, asking the same questions, really kind of going back after they left and ranking those interviews, and then really going in there and doing a good reference check. I think that's a whole skill set in itself, is how to talk to references and really make sure and vet the person that you're about to hire. And then I think we made some mistakes where early on we might have, when we hired someone, recognized there were some red flags early on. And I think when there's a certain number of red flags that build up, that's obvious that where you're talking about it, I think the worst mistake you can make is, oh, maybe they'll just go away with more time or more coaching and things like that, and not acting soon enough to kind of get that person out of practice. The more that they're kind of there and that they're not doing what you want them to be doing or acting in a certain way that goes against your kind of your brand, the harder it is to kind of detach them from that later on. So you save yourself a lot of headaches if you're very clear with what you're looking for and very clear when it's not there.
Yeah, for sure. The old, hire slowly, fire fast is
Yes.
so, so true. We all hang on for dear life, hoping the problem just fixes itself, and it rarely does.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So let's change topics. I like marketing, and you need to differentiate yourself because you are in we are near each other. It's called the Bay Area for people who don't know,
Yeah.
and it's a really a great zip code. Lots of good zip codes here. Very affluent. Lots going on down here. It's really a popular place in California. How are you differentiating yourself? If I'm not mistaken, I think there are like 100 plastic surgeons here in the Bay Area. How are
Yeah.
you differentiating?
It's a sneaky competitive market. I don't think people put San Francisco in their head as one of those top tier cosmetic surgery markets, but it's right up there with some of the bigger tiers, LA and like New York City and Miami. And it is one of those areas that's very daunting to just hop into and raise a shingle. For me, it's been also kind of a slow organic approach to social media. I think that was something that I tell younger surgeons: you're going to have to participate, whether you not like whether or not you like social media. It's something that you're going to have to do with some of the free time that you have in the beginning, where you're sitting around. And so developing that, I think that lends itself to being, showing your authentic self. And we're living in a day and age where that's one of the more important things that clients are looking at before they come in the office. They want to get a sense of who you are, what your values are before they really meet with you. So I have a lot of clients, it's almost like eerie now. They come in, they know everything about me. If they've seen my kids and things like that, they know that I like to make pizza. But it's nice. It really kind of gets some of that stuff out of the way. They feel comfortable. And so all that frustration of, trying to come up with something creative and do a little reel or something like that, it pays off when someone comes in, they feel a connection with you right off the bat. And that client you see that you're drawing in is the client that you want. So I think that was a really important thing for me. That was free right off the bat and available.
The other surgeons on the podcast have said start early. Do it when you're
Yeah.
still a fellow. Develop that skill early on so you hit the ground running when you are ready to like face the world.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that was a huge piece of advice that was given me halfway through fellowship. And I probably even started too late. If I had gone back, I would have started, the month I started fellowship. But I think the earlier you start to establish yourself, and another great tip that I got from a fellow colleague was, when you're a fellow, you can also start getting your Google business established. Just put your name there, get like a Google business verified account. You just need an address, a physical address. They can send you the verification card and start getting testimonials, because that's the other thing that I think really sets you apart. If you have really good testimonials that are heartfelt, that really kind of share and express the kind of care and thoughtfulness that you put into each approach with the patients, those are things that are really going to draw consumers in and help you grow your practice faster. So those are the two things right off the bat that you can do that don't cost anything. And then I would say, the biggest driver or a thing that we get ROI off of, besides, establishing a good website, is Google Ads. I think it's still probably the most valuable tool for marketing that at least I've seen. We do a little bit of Yelp advertising. Real Self is okay, but a little bit hit and miss. And then we've dabbled with print, but I found it hasn't really paid off.
Print's more, name recognition. And in today's
Right.
world, I don't think people need name recognition. I think you need to get straight to the consumer who could be interested in your services. Uh,
Right.
I would stick to that way more than, yeah, no, my patients say they see me in the magazine. That's because they know you. Don't worry
Right.
about that.
Yeah.
You,
Yeah.
yeah. Anyway.
My sister-in-law, she was at an auction, and she won a 4-week advertisement on a big billboard in this area. There's a million little billboards in the
Yeah.
Bay Area. We haven't done it yet because it's been a year. And so we're waiting for the right time to do it, but I'll let you know what the billboard looks like. It'll be kind of exciting when we finally do it.
Nice. Well,
Yeah.
the traffic there on 101 is unbelievable.
Might as
It
well take advantage of it.
Before I became a consultant, I used to, work in the Silicon Valley from San Francisco to Silicon Valley, but it was crushing. Like, I would leave at 6 in the morning to get down there. I'd leave at, like, 8 at night to get back home. I had no life. I was just
Oh,
in the car driving back and forth. But boy, you could look at that billboard for 20
yeah.
minutes. You know?
Thank God for podcasts.
So how much time were you spending on social media?
Less and less, to be honest. I was on it a lot in the beginning. I have like mixed personal feelings about social media. I would say I think that there's been a lot of bad things that social media have brought forward, and I still think that some of that is in there when you're dealing with it from a professional standpoint. Like, I'm not on it personally, and for the business, even when I was on it, it's like the same thing that they describe when you're on it personally. Like, when you leave it, you don't really feel that great about yourself. You're kind of comparing yourself to others. It's the same thing when you're on it, your business. You're like, am I busier than this guy? What's this guy doing? And there's a lot of kind of looking to the sides, and I just think that with all these things, the best thing you could be doing is just really focusing on your own business and your own practice and not really looking and comparing yourself to others. So that's kind of one of those things where, the further I've gotten into it, I've kind of pushed myself out and I'm trying to put that more on others around me. So we're kind of building a social media team at this point around us. Plus the type of practice and level of sophistication we're trying to bring, we weren't really able to create our vision. I think me and my partner, what we've always kind of valued, we're very creative people, and we actually do like kind of building content and having ideas around content creation, but the execution was really not mine. I mean, coming back from a long surgery and trying to edit videos and doing all those things was just starting to get too much. And so now as of like 6 months ago, we hired a videographer who comes in once or twice a month, does a whole day of filming content with us. We can kind of pitch ideas, and they can kind of actually create what our vision is. And so that's been a lot more fun. And I feel like it's giving us a renewed sense of interest in social media again.
Well, because now you have help. I also can't figure that out. I was in Miami for a meeting and I thought, oh, I'll just do my own carousel. Oh my God. 4 hours later, I
Yeah.
finally texted all to my girl and I said, I'm sorry, can you fix this? And she's like, oh, you were close, but
Yeah.
it's just what a waste of my
It's hard to
time.
keep up with it. It's hard to keep up with. And yeah, you're better off. I think that's one of the other big like recommendations I usually have for people starting their business is like, at a certain point, you have to bring in like experts for these things that really can leverage everything. And you're better off kind of setting a strong foundation by bringing in an expert. And yeah, it's going to cost you a little bit more. It's going to be an investment, but if you do it the right way and you're working with the right people, it'll be well worth it. And I think the same thing is true with social media. In the beginning, when you have the capacity to do it yourself, you should be saving yourself the money and doing it and not spending that on overhead. But once you get to a certain point, transitioning that to a team that can do it for you and make it better than what we could have done ourselves, I think has been the right decision.
Well, spend your time on the content part, but not the execution part, you
Right.
know? Like, that's
Right.
where you start saying, "This isn't my skill set. Why
Right.
am I learning this?" I give up. I'm just
Exactly.
I'm the front man, I do the content, but then I pass it off, and now
Yeah.
do something with it. And there's
Yeah.
plenty. Oh my god, the videographer idea is you have to have that, I think, in today's world. I almost think you have to have a videographer, like, on the payroll because they need to be taping you, videotaping
Right.
the life of a plastic surgeon and you visiting with your patients, the patients loving you, patient testimonials, nose reveals, like it just goes on and on. But
Yeah.
I would
Endless.
definitely like how else can you scale? I mean, you can
Right.
use injector for sure. You can add a videographer for sure, social media person to help. Those are part time. That's not a big deal. But do you have plans to scale?
Well, here's an interesting dilemma too that I feel like I heard and have been exposed to. So Rosenberg, who I trained with, David Rosenberg, he's a very well-known surgeon, but he's very under the radar. He doesn't really have a robust social media account. He's very like word of mouth. If you know him, you know him. If you don't, you don't. I've respected that about him, and I've seen how that has made his practice in some ways more elusive, and which is something that sometimes clients value. And I've even heard from a couple clients in this area who have seen a couple surgeons in the area, and one of the negative responses, oh, that person's too much on social media, and I don't like that.
Mm.
And so, in this particular market that we're in the Bay Area market, privacy is a huge concern for patients. They're in the tech community. A lot of them don't want to participate in social media, and they don't even want the doctors to be heavily participating in social media. And so it's one of those kind of like double-edged swords. You're like, do I do it for the growth, or do I try to make this kind of word of mouth exclusive practice, which is also a side fantasy and an equal fantasy of ours. So it's balancing those things. I think where the stance we're taking is trying to create an account that's not doing trendy stuff, just really focused on high quality results, patient testimonials, educational snippets, but keep it, no like graphic surgical content and those sorts of things, which I dabbled with in the beginning. And those would, of course, get the most clicks. But you kind of realize what you're trying to go for as an elevated client. You need to put out more elevated content.
I know, everyone knows Dr. Tim Martin in San Francisco, and
Yeah.
he didn't even have a website forever. Like,
Yeah. I
he
know.
was so, I said to him, like, "How are you doing this?" And he said, "Honestly, I'm not into all of this. He just did it very organically. I wouldn't bank on that, like,
No, you
it's
can't
not
really in today's
many."
society. Um, it's
uh,
very, very hard to do. I think that
uh,
there's a certain point that probably a tipping point, but for most people, I mean, you see the best surgeons in the country are still very much, these guys like Nyack who have these robust practices, and you
Yeah.
think that the guy's probably booked out for a year. He probably doesn't need to do anything, and he's still going to be busy, but he's still involved. I think there's some surgeons that do really enjoy the process of creating that content, but
Yeah.
it just shows you the power of how important it is for these well-established practices. They're still doing it. So
Right.
yeah.
So just in case you have to live in the real world and you need social proof, do you have any tips for getting patients to refer and approve your the photos for you to use?
That's a good question too. So I think again, it's a sensitive area for us. So this has been something that's hard. I'm not great at asking patients for that. I think it's a very uncomfortable question for us as doctors generally to have that question because it just feels like we're using them in some capacity. So you kind of have to uh, switch that little part off in your brain and really kind of get into the focus of this being an educational tool for patients. And I think when you present it to them in that way, that you're saying, you've benefited from seeing all these patients. When you came for your consultation, I was able to kind of show you what to expect. I showed you various stages of healing. I zoomed in and out of scars. Other patients are going to want that. And the bigger collection I have of patients that are willing to show their pictures, the more likely I am to find someone who has a very similar case profile to someone who's coming in for a consultation. And I can really walk them through that process and show them realistically. Because my goal is to always be realistic. I think that's the other downside of social media is it sets up unrealistic expectations because people are only showing their best work. For us, I really like to kind of walk through patients. Okay, this is something that we can expect. You have some challenges in your cases. These are cases that were very similar to yours. Let's show you their results and have this kind of really in-depth conversation with them, utilizing those before and after photos. And I think when you can present it in that way, and it really clicks for them. And I think the other thing is giving them the option to go, full social media release, which we have an option for, which is, everything from billboards to social media, website, to really just in office, just on the iPads, just on the computer screens. And I think a lot of them are willing, if you kind of approach it that way, to at least give you an office approval. And then just never being pushy. Just yeah, once the no is said, that's the end of the conversation. We really respect people's privacy and just kind of leave it at that.
My tip is just try not to leave empty-handed. I would start with the whole enchilada and work my way down. I call it crop until comfortable. And this
Right.
other person says, when they keep saying, no, 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 you can't show them in the office. No, you can't show them online. No, I don't even want you to crop. And then he says, well, can I at least get a review? And they say, okay, I'll do that.
That's true. Yeah, we should use that. That's a great tactic for the getting
Yeah.
reviews. I'll start
Yeah.
using that.
I like it. I like it a lot.
Yeah.
We're getting towards the end. Give me a crazy patient or staff story you care to share.
Um, Don't have a crazy, I'll put in two for the crazy patient or staff story. I guess one funny incident that happened. I was at this big party in Atherton, which is a very high end area around here, and I saw a patient I was going to be operating on in about 2 weeks. And I walk over and say hello. She's having a conversation with someone else, and she completely froze up when she saw
Oh,
me. And it was the awkwardness was just palpable. It was this very much, there was no introduction to the person she was talking to. And it made it very clear to me. It was a good learning lesson. If I see a patient in the community, I'll let them approach me before I approach them because not everyone wants to introduce their plastic surgeon to people.
that's a
Um,
really big pearl. Thank you for
yeah,
saying that. It's so true. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And now it happens all the time because I live right in the middle of the peninsula and I see my patients all the time. So I'll let them come up and say hello to me. Um, And then, I think interesting patient experience happened with us where, we saw my partner saw someone in consultation, um, lots and lots of red flags kind of immediately there, and sometimes red flags can take shapes in all different ways. There's like aggressive behavior, but there's also sometimes people that are overly nice or overly compensating for something.
Mhm.
And I met him for a very brief minute. And there was definitely some triggers going on that I was like, this seems like an interesting person. Um, we ended up, kind of falling back and saying this is not some the patient that we want to take on for the practice, and we thought it was end of story. We'll refund you your consultation fee and all this stuff, and we just feel like you'd be better served by another practice.
Oh,
And we ended up getting a couple calls and threatened that we were going to be sued for defamation and all these other things for not taking on his case. And of
mm,
course, I knew there was really nothing to that. You can't get sued for basically saying no to someone in an elective cosmetic setting. But it was interesting. We had to call up our malpractice insurance and tell them they're like, you didn't do anything right to this guy. We're like, no, we didn't do anything. But it just you just have to be. It's one of those things where we're in a very unique area of medicine, and you just never know people's you know what they're coming to see you for or what their intentions are at the end of the day. And a lot of us, I think, are really good at picking up some of these red flags and early in our career when we're so gung ho about building the brand and saying yes to everything. We kind of push those thoughts to the side. And I think the last 3 years, it's been big for me, a big realization where, I can look back at the patients or the interactions I've had where my brain was saying, listen, don't go there with this person. Don't take this journey with them. And of course, my gung ho spirit, I have a very positive outlook on things and I can spin it to myself sometimes and I move forward. I know I can make this patient happy. I know I can hit this case, make a home run out of it. And then you find out, no, well, those red flags, they get much worse after you've kind of committed and you've gone that far. And so I think I'm at a place now in this next kind of 5, 10 years of practice where no is going to be becoming more of a word I use in the clinic. And I think kind of recognizing those things, that I think the surgeons who recognize those things early on in their career and say no to those, they save themselves a lot of headaches. And especially in the beginning of your career, you don't really want to be kind of dealing with those types of patients, unfortunately.
I'd also count on your staff to help with that because women, especially, do follow their gut probably more. Every surgeon I've asked who's had a legal issue, I've said, like, Did you learn anything from it?" And they said, "You know what? I thought I could handle it. I thought
Yeah.
I got this. I got this. Yes, I had a feeling, but I thought I got this."
Yeah.
And then, sometimes even when you say no to them, they give you a bad review, and hopefully they say it in a psychotic kind of way.
Yeah.
Like,
That gives it away.
yeah,
Yeah.
sometimes you can tell as a reader, like, "What? What? What's the problem?" They said no to you, and then you say, "Well, because 'cause you're crazy, that's what you
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Usually the long, like, 10 paragraphs gives it
Yeah.
away, and most educated readers will say, "Oh, that's, yeah, one off." Even when I look at that sometimes at restaurants, you're like, "This person just had a really bad day and walked into a good restaurant and was finding something wrong."
Oh, God.
Yeah.
So you know what? We're gonna wrap it up now, but I do want you to tell us something interesting we don't know about you, and I would love to hear about your family, if you don't mind.
Sure. Yeah. Family first. I've been married now for, yes, 7 years,
Woohoo.
and we've have three beautiful kids. We have two daughters that are 4 and 2, and then we just welcomed our son, little Dominic. So he's the sixth of his name. He's actually named after my father, not me, but someone along the line skipped generations and just started naming boys after themselves. And we live in the peninsula. We love it here. We love exploring the areas and going for hikes and just really taking in nature. And I would say the things about me that not everyone knows, I'm like a crazy hobbyist. So uh, I've always, since I was a young kid, had to do things with my hands. And luckily, I became a surgeon. So part of my profession is now kind of doing that work with my hands that kind of scratches that itch. But for a long time, it was artwork. There was a brief moment where I was in med school and faced with a dilemma. I was selling a lot of artwork, and there was kind of someone who was a beneficiary who was basically offering to kind of go into the art world full time and pull me out of medicine. And luckily, I'm super happy I made the decision to stick with the path because this was a dream career, and I'm super grateful for it. But there was a brief moment where I thought maybe I'd go into the arts, and I think my current hobby or obsession is pizza making, which I feature on my social media all the time. I think it's, you come to San Francisco and you start getting into carbs and making sourdoughs and things like that. But I've been making pizzas for the past 10 years and I'm obsessed with it. I basically obsess over the little details, just like I do with surgery. How much gram, how much yeast. I'm getting into live cultures and things like that. I make every different type of pizza from across the United States, so New York, Connecticut style, Chicago pub style. So it's a fun little kind of side hobby and it feeds my family. It's great for when you have a lot of kids.
Well, you also have cinnamon rolls that looked
Yes.
delicious.
Yes.
Those are your annual, Mom's Day or something? Oh my
My
god.
wife's birthday request, but now it's
Really?
becoming like the
What tasted
Christmas
good as
morning
well?
request.
Oh,
My
Christmas
daughters
morning.
want it. I'm gonna be
Yeah.
making cinnamon rolls for the rest of my life. Yeah, so cinnamon rolls, basically, the pizza has evolved into all things dough. So I just, I'm on paternity. I've been making a lot of sourdough bread loaves for the
Yeah.
family, and I have a pizza oven out here. It's kind of on 2 days of the week, and we just fire it up. It's been great.
You're the only one in California that still eats carbs. Apparently, they're like, no, like the devil here. It's like, "Dear, we're
Well, I'm
tough."
from New York, so I was missing. I New York pizza, so I had to bring it out here.
Hello, I'm from
Yeah,
Chicago. I
that's
haven't had
right.
a good pizza out here. I'll
Well,
bet
come
your
by
pizza
sometime. I'll make you some pizza.
for sure. They can't make a good pizza out here because they keep prettying it up, you know?
Yeah,
Like they put
I
vegetables
know.
on it and makes it all soggy. And anyway,
Yeah,
yeah, I
we
like
could talk about that. We have a whole nother podcast about that.
yeah. Yeah. So, if somebody wanted to get a hold of you, I know your website is called og/aesthetics.com, but then you went off, each of you have your own Instagram account. So
Hmm.
yours is Dr. Dr. Gadaleta, MD.
Hmm.
But then you put together another Instagram account for the two of
Yes.
you called OG Aesthetics Bay Area.
Yes.
I know we shouldn't go back again, but can you just explain that? Was that helpful? Or?
Yeah. So I think, it's still, again, feeling out this, there's no real structure or like, book that tells us how to go about having one practice with two new surgeons in it. So it was kind of a little bit of marketing and, beta testing and things like that. And we both thought in the beginning, we both had our own kind of professional social media. So we said we should continue to that. And mine had a pretty good following because, like I said, for those 2 years before I started this practice, I was really kind of invested in building that. And so we were advised to make sure we kept those kind of accounts going. But we kind of always knew we wanted to eventually merge and have like a practice account. And that's kind of where the next tier of investment in social media marketing is going, is really kind of going towards that account, really using our own professional accounts for kind of more of the getting to know your surgeon, the kids,
Yeah.
featuring the pizza stuff and stuff like that. But by and far, most of the new content cycled through about the business is going to go to that new account. So that's probably one of the best ways to reach us. And through the website, of course, we have like a contact us, would be a great thing. And then anyone who really wants to reach out to me can also reach out to me just directly via email. So it's just Dr. Gadaleta, my last name, at og-aesthetics.com.
Gotcha. Thank you
Yeah.
so much. It has been a pleasure, and I'll be watching your career. Yeah.
Same, Catherine. I appreciate it. It's so nice to meet you finally.
Yeah. All right, everybody. That'll wrap it up for us today. If you would so kindly subscribe and give me a review at Beauty and the Biz, that'd be terrific so we can grow the audience. And then if you've got any questions or feedback for me, please leave them on my website at catherinemaley.com, or you can certainly DM me on Instagram at catherinemaley.mba. Thanks so much, and we'll talk again soon. The fastest way to success is to model other successful surgeons who have what you want, but you can only see their results, not the path they took to get there. So you continue to jump from one thing to another, hoping to find something that will work for you too. But it rarely does. So try this shortcut instead. It's guaranteed to move you forward. I compiled my intellectual property to grow cosmetic revenues, everything I've gleaned over the years, into one playbook of the most successful practices and what they do to win. Go to cosmeticpracticevault.com and let's grow your cosmetic revenues.